What's up, podcast crew, and welcome to another episode of the Brand Builder Show. Today's episode is a special episode. I'm so pumped for you to hear it. It's an interview with Mann from Thrasio. Now, in case you have been living under an Amazon-sized rock for the last couple of years, Thrasio are one of the fastest growing Amazon aggregators in the space. They have raised billions of dollars worth of funding, are buying up hundreds of Amazon FBA brands, and I reached out to them to have a chat inside our recent FBA Freedom Challenge. The FBA Freedom Challenge was a 5-day challenge that I partnered with John Elder to put on. It was a live training event, and part of it was we wanted to interview both successful sellers and also guests in the event to be able to unpack what it looks like to build a 7-figure brand in 3 years or less. That's the goal that we're trying to help people, the journey that we're trying to help people on inside of Brand Builder University, and have those discussions too on the Brand Builder Show. And so it was honestly such an insightful conversation with Jim. We talked about things like how to increase the multiple of a future exit. He talked about what Thrasio specifically are looking for, which may surprise you. Things like they do not care one bit about SKU diversification. They love brands that have a high concentration of revenue through a small amount of SKUs. And there's a whole bunch of other criteria in there that he does get into. He talks about how they will look towards the future of potentially seeing 10x multiples. In fact, we talked about an actual deal that has happened for a 21x multiple in the last year. So, you know, some crazy numbers in there, super insightful stuff. And I just love Jim. Like, he's so down to earth. He has a crazy story of Amazon FBA himself. So many gold nuggets in this. So sit back, grab a brew, grab a drink, and enjoy this episode with Mann from Thrasio. All right, welcome everyone that's watching. Welcome to this amazing session we're going to have with Thrasio. It's going to be an awesome session. Welcome to everybody that's watching on replay, which will be everyone right now, because don't expect anyone to get on live this quickly. But welcome if you're watching on the replay. Put a little hashtag replay in the comments so you know you're catching up. Great to have you with us, no matter when you're watching this around the world. But we are honored and privileged to have Jim from Thrasio with us. Jim, welcome along.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's good to see you too. I'm particularly excited, but I know our whole community is pumped about this session. It's kind of like the thing that everyone's been talking about all week, you know, looking forward to these industry giants coming in and telling us what to do. And so we're really looking forward to what you're going to share. We'll definitely open up as well for questions and comments. I know that people in the group are going to be leaving their questions as we chat through. So I'll try and feed back to use some of those comments and some of that feedback and questions as we go along and try and make it nice and interactive. But we're super interested to learn from you today. But before we do that, just why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at Thrasio?
Yeah, Ben, hi, thanks. Well, I am Director of Acquisitions at Thrasio. So I lead up, I'm sort of on the front end of the deals we do, mainly in UK and Europe, but working in the US as well. Before joining Thrasio, I was actually an FBA seller myself in 2013 full time. So as many of my friends are amused, they sort of see me as going over to the dark side. You know, I've gone from the seller to acquirer. But, you know, it's good. It gives me a pretty unique perspective. I bootstrapped a business 2013, built it up to multi 7 figures. And now that's really helping me, have a sort of proper conversation with sellers, you know, seller to seller. I think also it just helps, you know, from Thrasio's perspective to have someone that comes from that world as well. So yeah, it's nice for me. I'm still in the ecosystem, sort of different job, same world, same people. So that's what I'm up to now.
So do you kind of assess when deals come on the table, you assess whether they're good for Thrasio or not? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yeah, you know, some stuff comes to us. You know, we're a fortunate position. You know, if people are thinking about selling an FBA business, they've probably heard of Thrasio. So, you know, a lot of people come and knock on the door. But we still invest a lot in marketing. And increasingly, we're trying to put content out to help people build their businesses rather than just be seen as these vultures that hang around feeding off the ecosystem, which no one really likes. So, you know, we're trying to be a bit more kind of altruistic in our marketing, which is, if most people, I think, start an FBA business with a view potentially either to, first of all, sort of independence. And once that box is ticked, they go, hang on, there's an exit opportunity here. And so, you know, I see our job not just to buy those businesses when they get there. Our job is to help people accelerate the speed in which they can get to an exit.
Yeah.
So we're investing a lot of time in that and content, helping sellers over time now.
Yeah, and I think that really shows, and I think that's why, particularly why I was, interested to chat to you and get you on, because, it made total sense for me as I thought about it more, and as we discuss things more. This makes total sense for me, because the more brand builders you can help get to, build real healthy, equitable brands, the more opportunities there are for you guys to buy brands. You might not have the time resources to be able to build a load of stuff from scratch, but you can acquire these brands that everyone listening has got all of the time and energy to put into building. And for me, it's like it makes a perfect partnership, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're really good at taking brands when they've proven themselves, and then throwing complexity and resources and money and trying to scale them to the next level. The hard bit, the really hard bit, is launching a brand and getting it to $1 million. And we're not that good. We've never really done that. We do line extensions. We invest in sort of accelerating when they've done that, when they've proven themselves as a brand. But that startup, that bootstrap bit, that sort of hustle, that's not our expertise.
Yeah, no, definitely. So that'd be good to help as many people as we can get there, so you can buy their brands. We were joking the other day that we just launched a new brand less than 12 months ago and hit 6 figures with it. And I kind of talked through my plan, 100,000 this year, 300 next year, then $1 million the year after, hopefully relatively conservative goals. And I said, hopefully at that point, maybe we'll sell to you guys. I don't know, but you'll probably be doing 10 million plus deals then, only exclusively, maybe. I don't know, but
I don't know. Who knows? A year's a long time in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
3 years is an eternity. So no, we're looking to work with sellers who've reached that point where some people sell either at a point when they've reached a number they think there's enough for them to get out, or they're stressed out and they don't want to do it anymore. And I can relate to that, because I got to that point in my business, and as you know, my business got taken out against my will, but I was also at a point where I wasn't enjoying operating anymore.
Yeah, no, talk to us about that, because you haven't always been with Thrasio. You had this brand, you stepped into a new role. As much as you feel emotionally prepared, can you tell us the journey of what happened with that brand?
Yeah, I mean, I started in 2013. In a prior life, I worked in consulting, and I was working with eBay's senior management team in Europe. And they were going through a sort of a shift in leadership strategy, and we were working with them around a leadership story and engaging the organization to execute a new strategy as quickly as possible. And so I was always seeing really interesting decks from quite big companies in the work I was doing, and often the stuff sort of shakes around in the back of your head and it's completely irrelevant. But a few months after seeing this deck at eBay, a friend of mine said, "Oh, there's this thing called FBA, Amazon." And I was like, "Right, you've got my attention. I've just seen the strategy deck around the move away from direct to consumer and into marketplaces." And so we bought the course, the Amazing Selling Machine course. It was ASM1 at the time. Yeah. And, it was colored by numbers. You just follow the steps, little video here, do this, buy some stuff, this criteria. Threw it up on Amazon about 6 months later, because, it takes a while to go through it all. And I was still working, and it sold. And I was like, this is real. I built the business up from that, to right up until 2020. I could have probably exited before. I personally wanted to sell the business when I didn't need to necessarily have to work. I had enough money that I could kind of get through life. And I hadn't hit that point yet. And also multiples were lower then as well. And unfortunately, it was a travel brand. So, fast forward to 2020, I had a multi-seven-figure business doing really well. COVID came along. Europe fell off a cliff, 90% drop in sales in about 3 weeks. And 4 weeks later, COVID hit the US, and the US tanked. So I had about 3 months of panic. I fired my team. I pulled everything out of, when I realized COVID wasn't just a kind of blip, this was around for a while. Yeah. I pulled all my stock out of FBA, because obviously that was going to get expensive with long-term storage fees. Retail coming into Q4. And I was then faced with what to do next. And because I'd been around Amazon for ages, people were going, "Can you manage my brand? And do you want to do this?" And I was like, I realized I didn't like the fight anymore. I was in my business because I had a goal of exiting. I didn't like waking up and getting Seller Central anymore. I've been doing it for a long time. And that's when I knocked on Steph, who's the CEO at Thrasio, her door. And I said, "Look," and we're in a mastermind together. And I was like, "Steph, I'm kind of, you guys are a rocket ship at the moment. I don't have an M&A background. I used to work in consulting. I know FBA as well as anyone else does. And they were great. They were like, come and work with us, come and work with Ken in acquisitions. And, I'm okay with numbers. I have very good commercial common sense, but I work with some super smart analysts, and they really, really hold me up on where I'm not great, which is with numbers. So I'm happy chicken, because I'm still in this kind of entrepreneurial e-commerce Amazon world. But I'm doing something very different. And I'm learning all the time, and I love learning. For me, one of the biggest things that gets me fired up is just learning. So I'm on a whole new learning curve, and so that's where I am. I hit a bit of, I had a sketchy 2020. I had to sort of really keep it together for a few months.
It must have been tough to stomach. How did you get through it?
Do you know what? When you haven't got an option, you just have to work it out. I've got 4 kids, and my money was in the business. All my money was in the business. A successful and growing Amazon business sucks up a lot of cash flow. So, I had a lot of borrowed money in there. I had like best part of $1.3 million in inventory and warehouses around the world, and cash tied up. I did what I could to stem the bleeding, and it's like, right, what am I going to do next? I've got to start generating cash flow again. So I didn't really, from COVID hitting to starting with Thrasio was probably about 6 months. I started up a PPC agency. I was looking at PPE and trying to get masks in from China, as so many people were. I mean, I was on hustle. I was working probably harder than ever, but not generating much cash flow at the time. But that's life. You just when you get hit, you have to get up again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the reason I'm keen to sort of hear from you on this is because I think a lot of our listeners would struggle taking action for the fear of what if. And yours is obviously like a real extreme example of what can go wrong. And I'm chuckling, but obviously it's not funny at all. It's tragic. I'm obviously glad that you can be lighthearted about it, but it's a real challenging season you went through. And a lot of people will think, well, they won't start a business, they won't step out, because what if it goes wrong? What if I fail? I'm always of the mentality that even if you do fail, the learning that you get, the steel that you build in you from that experience is worth the experience. But like, has it changed how you feel about when you're talking to new sellers, to people that are ready to take a step out in business? Has it changed your mindset at all in that sense?
I was really lucky because when I was working consulting right at the beginning, we specialized in mindset. And so we used to, before we had the license for Tony Robbins and Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And we used to teach people about mind mapping. And so I came out of uni, and my first week at this company was sent off to a Tony Robbins event. So I had like a fire hose of mindset training in my early 20s that I think probably helped me out through these things. And partly I think that was a really good baseline, and and I encourage anyone to just really focus on personal development and mindset, because that's the biggest driver, right, for everything. But also, like I said, when you've got 4 kids and like the money's all invested in the business and the cash flow gets turned off, you have to hustle. There's no option. You can't just throw the towel in and say, oh, I'm done. So it's part driven by need, and part, I think, hopefully maybe some of the stuff that I absorbed in the 20s helped a bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to new sellers to try and avoid the situation you found yourself in? Is there, how do they protect themselves from something you went through? Disclaimer, I get, you can't predict something like COVID, worldwide pandemic, etc. But, just in terms of building a sure foundation, is there anything that you would have done differently if you were to look back and have that time again?
COVID was a lightning bolt. And, for a lot of people, it was a lightning bolt that lit up their business in a good way. And for the odd unlucky person in travel, it just destroyed their business. Most categories took off. Most of my mates saw kind of 2, 3, 4x on the back of COVID increases. Brandon Young, who you probably know, I had a chat with a while ago. I knew he was in travel, but he also had some brands in other categories. So his worked out, because travel tanked for him, but his other categories grew by 2 or 3x, and the business, aggregate grew really nicely. But would I suggest to people to launch brands in different categories? Probably not, because the complexity and the stress of trying to get your head into 3 categories and audiences, and the risk that puts on success versus the covering your, hedging against like another lightning strike. Lightning doesn't strike twice that often, right? COVID was extreme, and I was just, it's like musical chairs. The music stopped and there's 100 chairs in the room. It's just my one that went. So I think, I generally say to people, I wouldn't worry about tomorrow, because if you worry too much about tomorrow, it's going to paralyze you.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to back yourself, do your research, make sensible decisions, and then go all out. And if something comes that's completely unexpected and unpredictable, that's life. But it doesn't happen to many people very often. And when it does, you'll just get up and go again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I heard someone say recently that the fastest route to success, rather than having eggs in lots of different baskets, is actually put all your eggs in one basket, but then just really look after that basket. A lot of people are scared to do that, but
no. And it was the second time that happened to me, because I got killed by 2008 crisis as well. I was mortgage free on a house in London, and I moved to Spain, and I sold the house at 2007 and bought a big plot of land, which was going to be double its value, 9-month turnkey retail unit. And then 2008 hit Spain, and on apart from maybe Greece and Ireland, there probably wasn't anywhere worse to have your money. So I got run over by a bus in 2008 financially as well. Yeah. So wow. I think these things happen, and if you talk around to people who've had their own businesses, most people, or very very few people, will tell you it's been easy all the way through. Most people have been knocked over at least once on their journey.
Yeah, I mean, I can somewhat sympathise. We bought our first property in 2007, so I know the timing well. It was rough.
So all I can say is just back yourself and don't worry too much about what could go wrong, because that's a very paralysing sort of self-talk.
Yeah, for sure. Do you find, last question on this, because I want to move on to other stuff, but I think it's just really interesting how, so much of being an entrepreneur is resilience, right? And keep going on, keep being persistent. But it must have been hard in terms of, you mentioned like your friends, exiting, selling their businesses. Did you ever have to deal with bitterness that you struggle with?
No, people ask me that all the time, because I've got mates that started after me, and a couple made like massive exits last year. I mean, I've got friends that have made, $15 to $50 million exits in the last year and a half. No, I don't, because I just don't. Now, would I like to have 20 million in the bank? Absolutely. Do I feel upset or resentful they've got it? No. I think actually it shows possibility in a way. It's kind of motivating. I know that unfortunately the bus hit me this time, but I'm assuming it won't happen again, and next time it could be me. I don't see any point in thinking like that at all.
Oh, well, I hope if that ever happens to me, I hope I can react in the same way. Hats off. Very impressive. Let's move on then, away from your the past, and move into the present, and let's talk about Thrasio M&A. Talk to us a bit about the state of play, because there's lots of talk in the space, but you are working in it every single day. What is being in the Amazon aggregator industry like right now?
It's very exciting. It's fast moving. There's lots of cash flying around, all the stuff we hear about. I think 2022 is going to be a different year. Okay. We talked about this the other day. I mean, traffic on Amazon.com's dropped 20-30% since August. So there's now a post-COVID behavioral shift in consumer behavior on Amazon and off Amazon as well. And so aggregate's about 20-30% less traffic on .com. And some categories will have dropped off 50-70%. Wow. Others are still growing. So, the result of that is, I think, I know that people are going to get much more picky about what they buy. And the aggregator model is very simple. You go to someone and say, "Can you lend me some money?" They'll go, "All right, have some money." And you go, "What's the conditions of the cash?" Well, you got to make some money with that money, right? So basically, an aggregator has to buy a brand that they can come back and report back to their teachers or whatever, and say, "Look, I've done my homework, and we're outperforming the average performers in the category, and the category is growing. So can we have some more money?" And the whole cycle continues. So that's quite a simple idea, but it's not simple to execute when it's quite, we all know what's going on at the moment. So some category, there's the category movement. Yep. And then, day to day is quite tough. PPC is more expensive than it's ever been. Raw materials in China are pretty tough at the moment. Shipping's not really getting back to where it was previously. And in Amazon, in the bubble of Amazon.com or in Europe, there's still price compression, which is bizarre. So there's almost like a sort of denial going on about the external forces that are compressing margin. And it seems that people are scared to put the price up because there's so much competition. So, aggregators have to deliver profitable growth normally with a minimal, average EBITDA. So they can go back to their investor and say, please, sir, can I have some more money? And I think everyone's talking about some aggregators who came in gung-ho in 2021, lots of cash deployed. It was all about deploying cash. I can't speak to specific aggregators. I was involved in some deals and I saw what was being offered, and they weren't adjusting for COVID bumps. So, extreme example, like sort of booty bands and sort of home exercise stuff that blew up in COVID. They weren't adjusting the EBITDA for the COVID bump. So they will have paid massively for that 12-month trading history. And then in May last year, revenue dropped off by 50% on that category. And now suddenly they've left a business that's in decline. They're paying 10 to 20% interest on the debt they've borrowed. There's no organic profit to reinvest in the brand. They go to market and say, can we borrow some more money? The markets are like, show me how you've done that. Well, we're losing money. and this sort of death, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. I don't think anyone's going to blow up spectacularly, but if you've done 10, 20, 30 acquisitions and 20 are kind of struggling, you're a bit of a zombie because you can't borrow money. You haven't got organic cash flow to reinvest. And the fairy tale comes to an end pretty quickly. So I think this year, there's going to be a lot more focus on certain categories. I think there's going to be a spread of offers. So some brands will get 10x, some get 3x, whereas historically it's gone, everyone's got 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, and the multiple's gone up kind of flat across all categories. I think the valuation is going to be more future focused on how the category is looking rather than historical performance. And I think, I think some people will get offered, a lot of people will get declined. The people say, look, we're not a good acquirer for you.
Yeah.
I think, and then there'll be a range of offers based on how the future outlet is perceived to be by the acquirer. So, look, it's still a massive opportunity for people to exit. And I still believe that Amazon is probably the fastest way to get yourself to earning £1 million or £250 million exit. But I think it's going to be less rushed. It's going to be more considered and strategic than it's ever been from all the aggregators.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's interesting. The just quickly before we do go into it, like if anybody's listening and it's the first time they've heard this term Amazon aggregator, can you give us like in a few sentences, like exactly what that actually is?
Yeah, so I don't know, there's a guy called Richard, I can never say his surname, but he came up with the idea, it wasn't Thrasio, and created 101 Commerce. And his thesis was simple. He goes, I'll buy $101 million profitable Amazon brands, and I've got one of the largest e-com and most profitable global e-com companies operating. And they got to about, I think, 10, maybe a bit less acquisitions. And then the complexity of stacking all these accounts and PPC campaigns and purchase orders and bank accounts, and they kind of threw the towel in. Thrasio started in July 2018, similar idea. And the idea is that, as you aggregate more brands, you have more data on the algorithm, more data on PPC, you have more depth and breadth of the bench and supply chain, SEO, creative marketing. And the bigger the team and the more data you have, hopefully the more effective decisions you make. You de-risk the decisions and you can start doing more aggressive growth tactics than you would either because of cash or because of data and knowledge than a sort of typical, a small team of entrepreneurs can do, operating at 1 to 10 million themselves.
Yeah.
So, and the word aggregator is horrible. I mean, I don't like it, and I think some aggregators, and I think Thrasios, we've kind of moved to hopefully beyond that. And I think Thrasios is now the largest e-com growth engine globally, because we're not just aggregating Amazon brands. We can talk about this in a minute, but direct to consumer, we've got retail, wholesale, we're operating on different channels. So, and we've got industrial design teams for line extension. So we're really integrated right up from product sourcing and design through to logistics, the infrastructure in UK and Europe, and then of course the on platform and D2C marketing teams. It's more than just an aggregate of brands. It's a specialist e-commerce growth engine. Yeah.
That's good. And from like an economic point of view, the attraction obviously as well, it would be if you are a billion-dollar company, the moment you add a brand to your portfolio, that increases in value almost overnight, right? The business that you've just brought in. It's a really good question. I'm not quite sure how to answer it. So
there's speculative valuations and multiples on Thrasio and the other aggregators. And that's generally pegged against the equity given to the money coming in. So, Silver Lake just gave Thrasio $1 billion just before Christmas. And that sort of estimated Thrasio's valuation to be between 5 and 10 billion. No one's done an IPO yet, so no one knows what these businesses are really worth. So the guys that are putting the money on the table are speculating what this aggregate engine could be worth, the brands within it. But and the expectation, the hope is that because of it's more than just a bunch of operators together, there's a huge amount of technology. I mean, Thrasio's tech team and data team's over 400 people now.
That's insane.
That's bigger. I think that's bigger than the biggest aggregator team. I think I don't want to name names, but most aggregators, we have 100 people in defense defending listings, which is bigger than most aggregators. So that does add value as soon as a brand comes into that, because its chances of success and growth are much greater because of what's going on inside Thrasio. So there is an instant acceleration of multiple, but it's not just because you throw. This is the thing that's frustrating. A lot of people go, and the people have come into this with the idea of throwing 10 brands together and flipping them and selling them onto an aggregator, and no one's managed to do it because there's no value add and having 10 brands operating with 10 little mini CEOs and nothing tying them together and no platform. And that's the thing that I think people miss, is that you have to have a platform of data, technology and capability, and then yes, you can justify as soon as it comes into there an increased multiple, but it takes a long time to get that leverage. You don't get that just by throwing 10 brands together doing 10 deals. You get that by building a value added capability.
I think this brings us into multiples, because in terms of, I'd love to hear your thinking on it. You shared some interesting thoughts about future predictions and where that might go. You mentioned a juicy number of 10x, which is just like, oh, let's talk about that. But from my understanding, the higher the top line revenue, potentially the higher the multiple, right? So you're saying a group of brands might not be worth more just because they're a group, but is that that top line revenue aspect that doesn't apply in that situation?
I think what people like now, there are lots of things driving valuation. So category, pets is one everyone talks about. 30% of people went out and bought a pet during lockdown. So now you've got a guarantee, depending on how long your pet's going to live, between 8 and 15 years, 30% of people are now treating their pets and investing in their food and their accessories and stuff. So that category it's got a premium on it because it's going to keep strong. The other thing driving valuations is the level of profitability. And the revenue concentration. So operational complexity is something that most acquirers want to avoid. So $1 million of revenue across 100 SKUs is actually quite a lot of, each SKU is a new PPC campaign. You throw that into 7 languages and you've got all this complexity, and your supply chain are trying to keep an eye on relatively slow moving SKUs. And it's easy to sort of, have a delay, especially now you have a delay on the water and then you're out of stock and you're creating ranking issues. So revenue concentration has a real premium on it at the moment. So a $1 million SKU is very attractive. And so that might drive a premium. So $1 million SKU in the right category that's trending positively for the last 2 years has the key characteristics to maybe go direct to consumer, or has already proven some direct to consumer metrics around average order value and cost of acquisition and repeat purchase patterns and all that kind of stuff. Those are the guys that get a premium and they can get 10x plus. But there's very few brands that tick all of those boxes. So, you have to try and manage people's expectations. And I think, fair expectation in 2022, multiples are at somewhere between 4 and 6 up front, trading 12 months. And, we talk about it a lot internally at the moment because we're trying to work out where the market's headed. And we think it's going to drop off a little bit. And we think the average will be about 5. But some will still get 10 and some might get for 3. And they'll be driven by largely those things I've just said now.
Is that a Thrasio specific thing, or do you think that's across the board?
I think you're going to see it all across the board. Because, it's like I said earlier, it's just a really simple business model. You have to acquire brands and demonstrate that you can grow them profitably. And, So to do that, you have to have a very strong integration team, and you have to have a really strong brand ops team. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if you've got the best ops team, if the M&A team throw them a brand in a category in decline, it's a hospital pass. They're dead. Yeah. So that's why there's going to, I think, focus on certain categories. Yeah. Focus on trending growth for the last year, not in decline. Mm-hmm. The other things we'll look at are PPC. What's the average cost per click like in the category? What's the pricing trends in the category? So I think the other thing we're going to see is less rush to go, we'll close in 30 days, which is what Thrasio was actually saying like a couple of years ago. Yeah. We're actually probably going to say we won't close in 30 days because we're going to do some more diligence than we've ever done. Yeah. And it means you'll get a better deal and there won't be any surprises for anyone in diligence. Yeah. So yeah, I think people will slow down. They'll be more considered. Valuations will range depending on the outlook for that category and that brand in the future. Yeah. So there'll still be really bullish like exits. But I think there'll also be some slightly more conservative offers to less differentiated, desirable brands.
Yeah. Have Thrasio made a 10x acquisition yet?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to talk about it?
No. Sorry, I can't.
Oh, it's a shame.
No, and also it's partly we just we don't publicize that stuff. And there's also the discretion of the seller. A lot of sellers,
of course,
don't. It's a bit like winning the lottery. Like people start treating you differently. So people know they've sold your business, but especially for friends that are not in the Amazon world, they might think you've just made a couple $100,000. They might not realize it's 10 million in the bank. And so a lot of sellers actually want to be quite discreet about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
We asked all the time, like by the press, can we speak to a seller, or can we have a seller on? And you'd be surprised how few sellers want to kind of get on and do that stuff. They just work their guts out for a few years. They've got some money in the bank. They're normally either taking some time out to spend with their family and do what they want to do or travel, or they normally get a bit of an itch after about 6 months and they're busy trying to create a new brand.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. But we can obviously safely assume they pretty much would have been similar to what you described in terms of what you're looking for in those valuable brands.
Yeah. But 10x is not common. Yeah. I know a brand that got 21x last year.
What?
Yeah.
What were the circumstances around that?
It was a strange one. It was in the pet category. There's one really aggressive fund in the US that was rolling up at the time, a load of pet brands, and was paying crazy strategic valuations. And it was a friend of mine who's just, very good timing, right place, right time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I want to ask more about that, but I'm going to move on because it's good. All right. No, it's good. It's just so interesting for me, and I think everybody that's listening will find this stuff kind of super interesting, but also super motivating, because that if you put the work in to build something of value, then there's going to be, value at the end of it for you, right? Because that's where most brand builders are going to earn most of their money in that exit. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of sort of where to focus to get the best valuation on the business, the key things, the filters are trending growth, trying to deliver around 20% EBITDA, 15% minimum, healthy TACOS, somewhere between 7 and 15%. And I know some categories you can go low and some you have to burn a bit more. But 7 to 15% is a good sanity check.
Good.
Having your COGS at sort of 25, 30%. If you're getting up to 40% on your COGS, you're potentially structurally going to start having some pressure as PPC goes up. And then try, there's another myth that, well, it's not a myth actually. When you own a business, it makes sense to de-risk by having different channels and having lots of SKUs. So if one SKU falls over, you're not up at night. And if Amazon suspends you or you get attacked and you lose your account, then, well, I've still got 20% on D2C or 50% on whatever. Actually, acquirers don't like revenue spread out. They like it really concentrated, and they actually like some operational simplicity. So like really high revenue SKUs. So it's a difficult one, because as you come to prepare your business for sale, definitely streamline it. It'll make you much more attractive. But as you're growing, you also probably want to see if you can have another hero SKU or two that can fire up. So it's really having a view where you are on your kind of progression to exiting and just deciding when's the time to launch and test versus when's the time to really trim your sale and optimize your revenue and profit. Because you'll get valued largely on the future prospect of the category, but also on your trailing 12 months profit. And if you're scaling and launching products and testing tactics all the time, that tends to hammer your profitability.
It's really interesting because there's a big debate about it, I think, in the space between, a lot of people about what does add value. And there were some, staunch kind of believers in the camp of, no, you need to diversify, and people that are going to buy your brand don't want to buy something that doesn't have a social media account, doesn't have a website presence. And then you come along and you're like, none of that matters, just give us revenue concentration.
Well, it can matter. So what's a brand? Define a brand, right? That's another whole a story. But on Amazon, I'm a bit like a broken record on this. I think there's two kinds of product or brand. There's the commoditized Me Too, SEO'd, price sensitive products.
Yeah,
that's a hard fight to keep winning, and increasingly dominated by the kind of low cost Chinese operators. And then you've got the brands that are differentiated either by design, like physically design, which is quite hard to do and expensive, or just an aesthetic thing that just gives it a premium look and feel. And then if you can add to that an audience that drive, an off Amazon kind of engagement with an audience, which is easier in some categories than other, right? You're not going to create a huge following on a sort of coat hanger brand, but if it's pets or supplements or something to do with well-being, you can leverage audiences off Amazon quite a bit. That does have a value on it.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Lee in the chat in the group is asking, is it better for brands to focus on expanding to different marketplaces first, or rather than rushing to launch multiple SKUs on marketplaces?
I'll give you my personal response. If I was selling, it's much lower risk to drop. There's some caveats to this, but it's generally much lower risk to drop same product, new marketplace, like especially now with reviews porting, than it is to launch new SKUs from scratch with no reviews. And I've done it. I'm sure most people listening have done it. You launch a product, you think this is going to be the one. I know so much more than I used to, and you launch it, and it just bombs, and it happens all the time. So I personally, I would always say I'll check compliance and check demand and brand analytics and blah 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 in local marketplaces. But provided the demand's there, your reviews are going to port over, and your reviews look comparable, and therefore going to give you a similar kind of firepower. I'll guess same SKU new market first.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
It's so much quicker as well. Supply chain, you just go make me another 10,000 units and ship it there.
Yeah.
It's a much quicker process. Designing products, sort of specking, sourcing. It's a much you lose 6 months. Depending what you're doing, but it's easily 6 months per product to get it ready to go.
Yeah. No, I'm super glad you said that, because that's what I teach, and I'm going to be talking about that today. And I would have had to change my slides. I talk about, because James Clear in Atomic Habits, he talks about the growth of agriculture, and it talks about the law of least effort. And agriculture expanded really quickly across an east-west plane because of climate, and it was much easier to do, and that's how humans are wired. And I just figure it's the same with building a business, right? You go wherever is the least amount of effort to grow, and least amount of resistance that's going to help you build it up. So yeah.
Yeah, and let's just on that. I mean, some people say you should, when you sell your business, there should be some low-hanging fruit because that'll make you attractive. I mean, that's true, but you'll get more money if you've delivered that profit before you go to market, rather than a little bit of a premium because there's some low-hanging fruit there. So personally, trim your business for profit, go into other marketplaces, get it in a really good place with a nice 12 months trajectory, and then go to market.
Good. Okay. So to summarize, the ideal business for someone like Thrasio: strong revenue concentration, low, I want to say low SKU count, but I suppose it doesn't necessarily have to be low SKU count. But
no, not typically what we see and we like, and it's 80-20, right? So everyone talks about bloody 80-20, but a lot of the time, sort of 2 or 3 SKUs drive 80% of the revenue if you've got 10 SKUs, and as you amplify that, it's similar. So people do that a lot of the time by accident, just because some SKUs just don't deliver what was expected.
Yeah. Good. Okay. No, good. And simple logistical side of it, the operational simplicity is key for you as well.
Yeah. On Amazon is great. Off Amazon is fantastic. But if you're doing, say you're doing $1 million and you're doing like $100,000 on your direct to consumer, that's like, it's not a lot of revenue for a lot of effort to manage that Shopify store.
Yeah, sure.
So
okay. Yeah, that's good. No, it makes sense. Makes sense. Which would potentially be different if it was like a private equity or like a private buyer, maybe. But that's maybe another question for another day.
Yeah, there are different types of buyers in strategics, private equity, family, or you've got the guys in the States with the SBA loans, and then you've got aggregators. There are different options out there as well for who you can sell to.
Good. Okay, a couple more questions, and then we'll see if there's any last ones in the group and let you go. I know you're busy. In terms of deal structure, you mentioned about 4 to 6x up front and 30-day closing time. What would be like a typical deal structure for someone right now?
In the UK, typically we'll do there's two ways of selling your business. Normally in the UK, it's a share purchase agreement. In the US and other parts of the world, it's quite often an asset purchase agreement. Share purchase agreement, you're selling the limited company and all the assets inside it. A bit more complex because a lot of liabilities come across with that. So diligence takes longer. So rather than sort of 30, 45 days, it's more like 70, 80, 90 days. And then the asset purchase agreement is like, you're selling that, the trademarks, the domain, the seller central account, and you itemize all the assets. That's the main difference. And then once that's happened, you then go to a 2-year earnout period where, and I think most aggregators are the same, they'll offer you 50% of the uplift in profit for the 2 years after they bought your business. They throw in their team, their money, try and accelerate and scale the business profitably, and they give you 50% of that uplift for 2 years. So if you sell to the right aggregator and your category has got genuine growth potential and you've got a team behind it that know what they're doing, that earnout can really be a meaningful amount of money.
Do you require sellers to stay on in any capacity to see that?
Not about 8 times out of 10, no. Bigger deals, yeah. So if it's a 20, 30, $40 million business, they've typically got a team, a warehouse, and you can't just, it's not a clinical transition. So sometimes that will have like a transitionary service agreement for a year or 18 months while that stuff, their job is to sort of hand over and make themselves redundant over a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Okay. So let's take an example. Let's say 500,000 a year profit, and you're going to sell for like 2 million upfront. And then if they were to grow that profit it's only on the uplift, right? So if they grew that profit in the next 2 years from 500,000 a year to 1 million a year, they get another 250 a year.
Correct. And then the second year was the interesting one because it's pegged against the EBITDA at close. So provided you're growing every year and it goes 500 to 1 million, then the second year you get the difference and it's 500K. So it'd be 250 and 500 in that scenario.
Yeah, so almost another 50% then.
Correct. Yeah, this is why earnouts can be really cool. But you've got to go in there with your eyes wide open around what's a realistic expectation for your brand in that category, what's happening on the macro side of things. And also do your diligence on who's buying you. How good are they as operators? Because the earnout's only as good as the team behind the brand.
Yeah. No, that's such a key thought. Yeah. No, that's good. In terms of like a minimum for maybe Thrasio might be different to other acquirers now, but what would be like a minimum profit level that you would entertain?
We've been picky at the moment. So we're looking for a minimum of $1 million EBITDA, which is quite a high. We were a couple of years ago, we were looking at brands doing a couple of hundred EBITDA. So I think don't be put off by that. There are people that will acquire FBA brands doing 100K a year. I think what we're seeing is, we're looking for bigger deals and we're getting much more picky because of all the stuff we talked about. Yeah. And I think a lot of the other bigger aggregators are the same, but there's 100 aggregators out there. Everyone's got a different strategy and a different budget. So don't be put off by the numbers I'm saying. You can exit probably from 100K EBITDA upwards.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And I don't know if, again, you'll be able to share much on this, but I just thought of asking you if you have any examples, maybe details redacted or whatever, just any inspiration you can give to the people listening in terms of brands you've acquired and maybe their journey, like case studies, examples, that you would have maybe that would, just inspire our listeners about if they're just starting out now, 2-3 years time, what's the opportunity out there?
Yeah, a friend of mine, actually, I hope he doesn't kill me if he sees this, is Bold Unique, is a shampoo brand. And what the founder did is he's made a brand. He's developed hair masks for a specific audience. It's in that value premium category. So it's differentiated, it's expensive, but it's cheaper than premium brands. Very passionate and loyal customer base. Not that many SKUs, so about 15 SKUs, which for us, for D2C, is a good number, because we can start, once people buy that product, you can then start upselling and cross-selling and start creating a lifetime value. So it's got a really good D2C platform. Formulation takes about 6 months. Like, the stuff you learn when you're doing this is great. So, they formulate this champagne and they have to leave it on the windowsill for like 6 months to see what happens, just to make sure it doesn't all congeal or just separate and stuff. So, he's done the hard yards. He's built really nice design, really nice packaging. He's built a brand rather than just an Amazon product. He's built a passionate following off Amazon. Like, people now posting all the time on Instagram, like, unpaid for. And that's a brand that we think we can take from being a really strong Amazon category leader to potentially being a global category leader on and off Amazon. So businesses like that are great, and they get a premium.
Yeah, good.
And there's a tail in there to be wary of as well, actually, because it is really good to sell exit right now. But there's a lot of lofty promises made to get people to sign LOIs, and this is a good example. This guy came to market, got closed over the weekend on a crazy multiple, and it was too good to say no to. And then sort of, I think 8 weeks into diligence, the aggregator, who's quite a well-known one, realized it was too complex for them and walked away, having kept him up all out. I mean, diligence is quite grueling. You don't want to have to do it twice.
Yeah.
And he ended up taking a lower offer from us, because he then realized the importance of having an acquirer who knows what they're doing. And a lot of people get hot under the collar about very sexy LOIs. You really need to do your diligence on who's buying you, because there's a lot of LOIs get signed and don't make it through diligence, and sellers get kind of chewed up and spat out in the process. And they just move on to the next deal. That brand is a really nice thing to look at as a success story. But also, if you are selling your business, just go in there with your eyes wide open and make sure you're doing your diligence on your acquirer as well.
Yeah, definitely. Great thoughts. Just to finish up then, and then I think there's a couple of questions I might just fire quickly at you. What kind of advice would you give to anyone that's looking to launch a brand right now and has got a vision of an exit? What's the key focus you would say in this first year? Focus on this, and this is going to set you a really good foundation.
I think really, I know your audience. I know in the past it was all about Amazon hacks.
Yeah.
Now I think you've got to look at Amazon as a channel with a big customer base. But you've got to think about, why would I buy your product? Because there aren't too many categories now that don't have a big review base. So you've got to come in with a differentiated story or product. And if you can build an audience off Amazon, drive traffic in, that's very powerful as well. Yeah. But don't fall down the trap of going, there's this much demand, search traffic, and the old kind of, if they're selling that much, I can get 20% of that, and then I'm quits in. If you go in with that kind of attitude, it's gonna be tough. Amazon's amazing, but the people selling and doing well on Amazon now have to be really good business people. It's not just a sort of hack platform anymore. So just, you got to do the basics really well right from the start as a business person.
Yeah, great thoughts. Couldn't agree more. Really solid thoughts. Appreciate that. Just checking the group for questions as we finish up then. Clayton says, along the 80-20 SKU count, would you advise dropping loser revenue SKUs before going to market?
It's up to you. If there are a lot of, what will happen with your acquirer is they'll probably do that post-acquisition, because everyone's trying to just make sure that they get the best return on every hour and every dollar spent.
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurs put a lot of life and a lot of sweat into launching a product, and if it's not losing money, they kind of just maintain it. I used to do it. Everyone does it. If it's not losing money, well, I'll leave it there. But when you get a bit more disciplined as an acquirer, you start killing off a lot of stuff that's just like using time and not making money.
Yeah.
So short answer to your question is, yeah, it would be helpful probably to your cause. It gives a nicer perspective on the business.
Yeah. To would be helpful to keep them in.
No, if it's literally turning over and it's like 3% of your revenue and not generating any profit, it's not adding value to your business, and it's taking time for you to work out how much inventory to order, and it's not optimizing your time or your cash flow, and that's what you should always be thinking about.
Yeah. Do you, on that similar note, if there's, say, Seller Central, you've got lots of random stuff going on there. How important to you guys is a tidy Seller Central, tidy finances, all that kind of stuff?
Seller Central, not so important. Finances, you need to have your P&L, accrual-based P&L for the last 1 to 3 years prepared when you come to market.
Yeah,
that's one thing as an absolute baseline. If you come to market without a monthly accrual-based P&L, aggregators will build it for you, but you're putting your trust, your numbers in their hands. But also, it just looks like you're not really serious about selling if you can't be bothered to put your P&L together properly.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't know how to or hasn't done it, that's fine. Get someone to do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it just looks like if someone is running a business doing $1 million or plus, and they haven't got proper numbers in place, it's an instant, these guys can't be on top of their business if they haven't got this foundation sorted.
Yeah. Someone says P&L, question mark, profit and loss.
Profit and loss account, sorry, yeah.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. It's good. It's good. We love helping people learn this stuff. It's there's so much to learn, right? When you're launching and scaling a business. But I think you've detailed for us over this last 45 minutes together the opportunity, the scalability of these businesses and the life-changing possibilities. So I think as an industry, we're growing to be more and more thankful for people like Thrasio. I think early on people were worried, how's this going to go? And I think from my perspective now, I just look at it and think, man, this is so great for our industry. So we appreciate your input massively.
Yeah, I mean, selling a business in 2015 was not even thinkable.
Yeah.
Borrowing money from a bank for an Amazon business was not even thinkable. You had Amazon lending, and that was about it. So, the world's moved on. People do worry about aggregators. I don't think people need to. As a percentage of total revenue on Amazon globally, we're nothing. Some people blame the advertising costs on aggregators. It's a crazy idea. The cost of advertising is going up everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Google. It doesn't matter. It's just the problem is since COVID shut everything down, and everything's moving online. Of course, all the advertising money's come online, and that's affected every platform and every channel.
Final question. Sorry, I know I keep keeping you on it, but crystal ball, you said about price compression, increased costs. That can't carry on forever, right?
I think China is not going to get cheaper over time, so I think sourcing out of China is something probably to look at. And Apple, on the back of COVID panics, have restructured their entire supply chain. So, if you want to look for what might be in the future, Apple's not a bad place to start. And then you patch that with consumers liking a more sustainable supply chain, and more local supply chain being more comparable to Asia because of the cost in Asia. It could be time to look locally. And also, if you're sourcing locally, you might save yourself a whole load of money on when you've got a container on the water. That's cash tied up, right? So if you shorten the supply chain, you have a lot more cash flow running in the business. So you can actually grow the business quicker with less cash by having a shorter cash flow cycle on supply chain. So China's still amazing, but I think it's worth, if you have time, to start looking elsewhere. Yeah, depending on the category and what you're making, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's such an under discussed topic. The speed at which you can turn over your money.
Cash flow is what makes or kills most businesses. And in what we do in FBA, if you're sourcing in Asia, especially with supply chain problems now, where containers have sort of doubled the time they take to get in, and then it might take 2 weeks to check in once you think it's made that final hurdle. That it can, and 2 weeks out of inventory then has a knock-on effect on your ranking, and you've got to then invest in PPC to get back up. So having a reliable supply chain with shorter cash flow cycles and reliable timescales is massive.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Gosh, this has been so good. Clayton says thanks. Matthias says this was great. So thankful. Paul says super valuable information. Would love another hour of discussion. Me too, Paul. But this man's a busy man. He's got.
Happily. No, honestly, I feel like we could talk about so many things. So happy to have another chat another time.
No, definitely. But I think we've got you lined up for some more stuff in the future. So there'll be hopefully more stuff coming. And that's really good. We really appreciate your time, Jim. We appreciate you taking time out, and like all of the comments are saying, it's been super, super valuable. Where can people find out more about Thrasio if they're interested?
I'm on LinkedIn, Jim Mann with 2 N's, or jim.mann@thras.io, or on the website thrasio.com or thrasio.co.uk. There'll be a form there you can fill in.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Well, what an episode that was. I honestly loved this conversation with Jim so much, and I'm glad you guys have got to experience it as well. Like I say, it was recorded live inside of our challenge, so a bit of live interaction there, which hopefully came across well in the audio. But regardless, there would have been so much value in there for you. So if you did enjoy it, please do like the video, leave a review for the podcast. We'd love all that kind of stuff. And doing that, subscribing to the podcast and leaving a review for the podcast really does help us to continue to get high caliber guests like this on. And as discussed in the show there, we did announce inside of the FBA Freedom Challenge that we are launching the Brand Builder Summit. The inaugural Brand Builder Summit is this year in April 6th to 7th. Jim is going to be speaking, so do make sure that you sign up for early bird information. We're going to run that event as a free event, but we will have like a VIP package that you can get some more access to the speakers as well. So definitely check that out on the link will be in the description below for the early access stuff to that. And we will look forward to seeing you in the next episode real soon.